Dr. Garry Nolan has been at the centre of the UFO news recently, especially after he came out at the SALT convention to state that he had been working with UFO materials. Now, Ross Coulthart has done an interview with the doctor, Dr. Garry Nolan, and this actually was originally recorded, as you can see down in the bottom corner, on November of 2023. But there have been some cut parts that have been reinstated to this interview. So we're going to take a little look at it today to see what Dr. Garry Nolan thinks about basically the whole UFO topic and the state of things at the moment. Right, let's get into it.
The statement of intent for SOL is that you aspire to be a serious, well-funded, cutting-edge academic research into the nature of UAP and their broad cosmological and political implications. That's a noble aspiration. How do you do that, though, with something like UAPs, which is so intangible? We don't know enough about it. How do you even begin to gather data? Where do you start?
So I think you start by clearing the table, putting all of what is known, not aside, but into a place where you can pull it back in a bit at a time. You categorize first what the questions are that you want to ask. You bring off of the table, or the material that you put off the table, and you put it back on by basically cleaning up your bedroom, right? And that's really what this is about. It's putting things away in the right places. Now, but I mean, the objective is, once we've put all of the data into the right categories, we then say, okay, well, what of this meets academic standards and criteria of excellence? So I know what that is from a scientific point of view. Peter Skafish knows what that is from a sociologic and anthropologic point of view. So in so doing, we say, okay, well, look, all of this is nice, and it's great information, and a lot of people have thought about this, but how do we start to put it, we will start to put it together in a way that brings it to the government, because it's not about telling them what to do necessarily. It's about talking with them about what kind of questions they want answered, and then we begin to direct them down, I think, the necessary paths.
Very interesting. I like that. I like that it's very, it's basically taking the horse to water kind of thing, and instead of answering that directly, being like, well, here's the research that we've got, here's the reports, all the rest of it, go down your own path of research and see what you discover from this. I like that.
There's a bear in the room, of course. The government knows probably far more about UAPs than it's letting on. Does that frustrate you as a scientist?
Parts of the government, right? So we often talk about the government as a single entity. It's a tentacular monster, right? So there's parts of the government that don't want it, and there's parts of the government that do want it. And actually what you're seeing, most of the information that's coming forward is from the people who themselves are frustrated that the information is not out there.
Well,
that's where whistleblowers come from, like with the likes of David Grush. He got frustrated, growingly frustrated, that basically the public wasn't being told about this stuff when he thought that they should be.
what drove you personally to get involved with a group like SOL? Why did you recognise the need for a foundation to investigate UAPs? Because really, shouldn't this be being filled by government? Isn't it a government?
No. Oh my God, not government. That's the worst possible thing to do. When it comes down to it, at least, why did I get involved? I saw that there was an incredible amount of data out there, but that the right kinds of scientists were not involved. If I'm going to get my colleagues involved, then I have to help make this credible so that they can feel they can come out of the shadows. There's plenty of people who I talk to behind the scenes who are academics, mainstream academics. They just don't want to talk about it yet because they feel that the stigma is still too high. But that's quite different 3 years ago than what it is today.
I was going to ask, are you seeing a change?
Absolutely, yeah. Such an incredible change of people saying, first of all, well, thank you for doing this. How can I help? So I used to get a lot of emails, thank you for doing it. Now I get a lot of emails saying, how can I help? And so that, I think, is the kind of change that we're looking for, because it really is the sort of grassroots effort that's going to move this forward. And the other thing is that you can't wait for daddy government to tell you what you think you already know.
That's it. You can't. Like, the thing is the government's never going to outwardly say what they know. So it is down to, like, that grassroots idea is brilliant. Like, you know, kind of, it starts at the bottom, and then you just pile up, and then you just get more and more executive people, and to the point where, you know, you just find out for yourself, and the government either has no choice to tell you, or you work it out before they tell you.
You don't need to give them, they don't need to give you permission to move forward. But why we do need government is that, frankly, you still need the funding structures, right? So how is it that we create an incentive, both for the people on the inside, as well as the government, to release the information? I mean, the incentive shouldn't be, we're all at the doors with pitchforks, right? The incentive should be that this is going to help the country in some way, or the military.
That's why I think now, so obviously it's about, you know, 8, 9, 10 months down the line, there has been the, there's basically a GoFundMe that's been set up by Dr. Garry Nolan and other associates of his, like whistleblowers and the like, to basically crowdfund this research and this support to try and get this UAP information.
If you do get breakthroughs in your research, there's always the, I admit, distinct possibility that you might stumble across something that somebody's sitting on in private aerospace or government. Are you worried you might get shut down? I mean, the government does have the Invention Secrecy Act. They can shut down research if they want to.
If they want to, then fine, but they can't shut down all research, right? I mean, what are they going to do? Tell me I can't do my work in my lab, right? I mean, I'm not worried about that, really. Actually, that's almost the least of my worries at this point.
Wow.
Good science is based on, of course, the scientific method. You test a hypothesis with experiment and replication. By its very nature, is anything related to the phenomenon of UAPs repeatable?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, look, if UAP materials exist, right, allegedly, and there's plenty of people who are credible enough to say that they do, they're perfectly subjectable to the scientific method. So and that's what I want. You know, I think the other way to look at it is that the best people are not necessarily on the problem. That's not to say that there aren't good people in the government who are working on this, but is to say that the best people are at research facilities in public institutions around the world, and we want them involved. And because, you know, it's the best way to solve a problem is to bring in the experts. And it's not that academics are coming in and saying, get out of the way, we're going to do this, we know what's going on. It's that they need to be available for instance, me. If I have a question from the government to say, hey, we need help on this, I can use my position as an academic to reach out to that individual and bring them in, you know, in a good way. For instance, I was somewhere where a person, a scientist of very, very high status, I said to her, I need you. For what? She asked. And I told her. And she says, you're kidding me. And I said, of course not. You know me. But I need your help. And she said, okay, let's talk about it.
This is the issue, is like, you can go to the best and brightest minds in the world and you can pitch this idea and they're like, okay, so what's this really about? UFO disclosure. Nah, see you later. Because there's such a stigma around UFOs where if you get involved in the mix and get in the mix of it all, you're a tinfoil hat wearing nut job. That's basically the stigma of this, and it's unfortunate, but it's true.
How much of the problem is that there's a dogmaticism in establishment science to even considering the possibility that this UAP issue is real?
How much?
Yeah, how much of a problem is that for you?
I don't see it as a problem. I mean, it was a problem previously, but I mean, frankly, I don't care what these other people think about what it is that I'm doing with my time. But I mean, it's an interesting word that you used, dogmatism. Where's dogma most usually used? In religion. So the best comeback I've actually found that actually causes an almost visible step back from scientists who are challenging me on this is to say that, well, first of all, you should give your PhD back because you've just broken your oath because you're not asking the right questions. And second, you should go join a priesthood.
You know, the thing I love most about what I've seen at the Soul Foundation AGM is the idea of different people from different fields of science sharing ideas. And that's the very thing that, if they're telling the truth, people inside the alleged crash retrieval program say it's not happening. Good science is being frustrated by secrecy.
Well, I think, you know, just today's conversations alone, where you had both scientists as well as sociologists talking, I mean, frankly, I struggled through listening and trying to understand the points of view of some of the sociologists. But I realized, this is a change where I need to understand, because I can see what it is that they're saying. I'm beginning to understand the language. And because they, as much as scientists, are part of the conversation, because there's a whole swath of the public who really doesn't understand or doesn't care a whit about the science, but they're interested in the sociologic changes that might come. And so there's people out there who are experts in that as well.
I think that's true. I mean, no one, like, the point is if UFOs were to be discovered and there was a crash retrieval program and we've reverse engineered UFOs, the first thing people will go to is, well, how's that going to change society? How's the future going to look now because of this new technology that we've discovered, which is, you know, hypothetically, way advanced or way more advanced than what we've got. But no one cares to think about what work's gone into reverse engineering that. Everyone just thinks about themselves almost. It's a fair point to make.
One of the things that came out of today's conversations was the fact that there's a lot of talk about technology, analysis of metamaterials. You did a great presentation on the samples that have been recovered from alleged spillage, if you like, from objects. What about witness evidence, people who claim to have had experiences? How do you measure something like that?
I leave that to the sociologists. I mean, it's what you would call an anecdote. Now, believe it or not, in medicine, there's utility to anecdotes. You can publish an anecdote, but that's usually a medical anecdote of something where you would be able to take all of the criteria of the individual's health. Anecdotes are important, and they have a place, and there's actually a science of how to use those kinds of stories, but that belongs in the sociologist's area. I have my own personal anecdotes, but that's different. I can't use them when I'm talking science, because the science has a particular language and an approach, a methodology that, and I've said this many times, this is my mantra, it's the data, not the conclusion. That the data, if I can convince another scientist that the data is real, then I can ask them to think about possible conclusions.
The reason...
That's what the best science is peer reviewed. Obviously, Dr. Garry Nolan could go along, create this hypothesis, do his research, find the data, and then present the data and his conclusion from that data. But then the idea is that you publish that paper, it gets peer reviewed, or just before it gets published, it gets peer reviewed, sorry. Someone else might find an entirely different thing from a different field of science in which Dr. Garry Nolan hasn't seen, and it might evolve. Like, let's say Dr. Garry Nolan looks at a piece of material and it can evolve human technology by 100 years, all right? And he's like, wow, I've just moved forward a century in a couple of months, let's say, hypothetically. Another scientist looks at it and it was like, well, look at this. If you do this, 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 and this, we can actually move forward 1,000 years. Like, it's pretty crazy.
I ask is because it's a matter of public record. For example, Jim Lakatsky has publicly said that he was witness, or he has direct knowledge of crash retrievals. So there are allegations on the public record now of crash retrievals. Does it frustrate you as a scientist that if we're talking about the analysis of materials, the best science would be to be able to go directly to those materials and test them directly?
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, I would give this tooth to go and see them. But I also realize that there's a process of basically acculturating those on the inside who've had good reason not to have, or felt that they had good reason not to. So how do we incentivize them to agree with us? And so, yeah, I mean, I would love to. I'd leave this room right now and go to do it.
Soul's head of research, Peter Scaffish, talked about how he thinks disclosure of the reality of UAPs has already begun. Do you agree?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a disclosure of that there's something that they're trying to hide, right? And you have the people who've come from within the government who've said it, that it's real, and then you have the government twisting itself into pretzels to try to not admit what's going on and using weasel word language to try to get around what it is that they're saying. For instance, the head of Arrow saying, well, we have something that we don't know what it is, it's moving in ways that we don't understand, and that's verifiable, but we have no proof it's ET. Well, really the question should be, will you please define what ET would be?
Or define what's not justifiable as well. And that's the thing. There is countless reports from Arrow that have come out that have stated, we can't work out what this is, so we're just going to label it as something. 9 times out of 10, that comes in the form of a balloon. They're like, we don't know how this works, but it's clearly a balloon. Well, how can you say it's clearly a balloon when you don't understand it? You don't understand the physics. You don't understand how it's just changed direction, traveled 180,000 mile an hour, for example, Mach 9 speed, that's dead, stopped dead, plunged down into the ocean, and then reappeared about 15 minutes. How are you going to tell me that's a balloon? They're like, oh, we don't understand that, but it's a balloon. No, shut up.
Before you dismiss, so it's a really fascinating use of language that they're using to basically play a magician's trick. And so I think and something quite interesting just happened, right? Public outcry against this lack of transparency, at the very least caused the director to perhaps move on a little bit earlier.
I think there is
I think that's Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick that they're referring to there. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Sean Kirkpatrick.
frustration, isn't there?
Yeah.
The government's not moving quickly enough.
Right. I respect what it is that Sean Kirkpatrick has been doing. He's put in an extremely difficult place. He's clearly a smart man. So this is no disparagement of him. But I think he also has realized that given where the conversation has moved, it's time for another kind of director. It's like in a company. A small company, I've had many startups, there have been times when the CEO of that company is no longer the right talent as the company's grown, so you need to bring in a different kind of individual. I think we're seeing that right now.
With the ideas and the research that you're doing, is it your hope you might be able to commercialize some of these ideas? But what happens if you come up with a new propulsion system or a free energy system?
Yeah. Well, my entire career has been taking basic ideas from multiple domains, merging them, and then turning them into something useful. And then realizing that, early on, just putting it on a library shelf is the best way to get that idea to just collect dust. So that's where you leverage your energy of belief in its utility with the commercial arm, which is basically venture capital money, and we sit amidst the best of it here.
See, he can't directly say, if I found out this propulsion system, I'd sell it to the US Army. Because then he becomes across as a bit disingenuous, and the idea is that, he's not doing it for the excitement of discovering this. He's doing it for the financial gain. So he's never going to actually outright say, I'll commercialize it and I'll sell it on to the highest bidder, because again, it just discredits him. In
California and at the Stanford area. And so I think there's an opportunity there as well. I've said this publicly, the UAP amendment is basically either or. It stays secret, there'll be a panel that overlooks it stays secret, or it goes into the public domain. Frankly, I think precious little will end up in the public domain if certain people have their way. But there's this third arm in between, which is where you can incentivize with commercial activity to basically bring in the best scientists, but have somebody else pay for it.
So is that part of your hope, your aspiration for Sol?
Absolutely.
So it's going to put the squeeze on government?
I wouldn't say put the squeeze. I would just basically say, here's the reason why it would be a great idea.
What is your greatest concern?
My greatest concern in what?
On the issue of UAP disclosure.
Here we go.
Oh my God. Well, I would say perhaps the easiest way to say about the greatest is that there's some world event that everybody turns and has to pay attention to, like the pandemic. Sure. And that those who want to keep it secret don't need to shut it down. They just basically play the magician's trick again, and it gets lost.
Because there is an opportunity right now, isn't there, for humanity? The potential. Can you give me an idea of how strongly you feel about the potential of the technologies that are being expressed, at least by what those objects represent? If they're real, what are the potentials for humanity that come out of that?
One of the things that I've always liked about a place like Stanford is that I've got a lot of people around me who are smarter than me at any of a number of different things and areas. And I love being, I'm not scared that somebody else might be smarter than me. So I look at this and say, well, there's somebody smarter than us. And so I don't think that I'm going to have an anti-gravity craft, before the end of my existence. But what I do see is a new way perhaps to think about the universe. And so I look at that as an opportunity to learn from somebody who's more intelligent. It's simple as that.
And you're pretty upfront about this. I know you have been with me in the past. You think there is something real out there and it's non-human.
Well, the evidence seems to suggest that there's certainly data off the curve, as we often put it, that there's a line and then there's data that doesn't seem to fit. The circumstantial evidence basically has me convinced that it's well worth my time to spend looking at it. Because there's two kinds of questions. There's the what you call Las Vegas question, where the answer is either yes or no. And if it's no, you waste your time. Or then there's what we call the Zen question. No matter what the answer is, it's interesting.
Very interesting. So, what do you guys think of this? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. While you're down there, be sure to jump scare the hell out of that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Tick on my little bell so you get notified whenever we upload to the channel. And until next time, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed. Cannot wait to see the next one. And I'll speak to you later. Peace.